Hello, hello. I'm so glad to be here tonight. Before we get started, for those who might be brand new, I'm Julie Bogart. I am the author of The Brave Learner, Raising Critical Thinkers, my new book, Help My Kid Hates Writing. But also, and mainly, I am the head of Brave Writer. And Brave Writer is the company I started 25 years ago. And now we have a wonderful staff who know how to do everything even better than I ever imagined or dreamed. And together, our whole mission is to make your life easier and your education more effective for your kids. Okay, so let's dive in. Today, we are talking about writing assessment, reframing that. What does it mean to assess a writer? So, before I get started and share what I think about this topic, I would like to ask you, when you think of assessing your child's writing, what are the concepts that are most important to you? Is it grading? Is it doing enough writing in the year? Is it paying attention to whether your child is improving in the mechanics like spelling, punctuation, and grammar? Is it wondering if your student is ready for the next level? Like when you're looking at this time of the year and we're coming up to May, and you've presumably been homeschooling for a while, even if you started in Australia in February, what are you thinking about? How are you evaluating, looking at the writing your kids have done? What are you looking for? Do you have any criteria? Are there things that you care about that matter to you? So one of you says, wondering how to critique without discouraging the student so that they become insecure about writing. That's really important. Trying to focus on growth between the start of the year and now. When you say growth, what are you measuring? Is it length? Is it complexity of sentences? Let's see what else. My my criteria is that they want to write. Have they gone from maybe reluctance or resistance to actually finding some pleasure or meaning in writing? Um, Seeing him grow as a communicator. How would you know? What makes communication better today than it was in September? Writing regularly and with ease across their studies, growth in clarity of thought, and mechanics in editing. I want to know she's excited to write. I still don't care about the mechanics. We study grammar separately. Seeing progress from earlier in the year, content, handwriting, knowing where they are at and if they are writing enough, if their mechanics are where they should be. How many of you have that concern? You're like, I just want to know that they're not behind and they're where most people think a fourth grader should be or an eighth grader should be. How many of you have that feeling? I like this one. Here to learn. I have no idea. My oldest is in first grade and we have hardly done any writing. Bravo. I'm glad to hear you have not ruined your child's feelings about writing yet. That's very good. Success at getting more of their thoughts to the page, hoping they enjoy their projects, figuring out what the child needs to know and what is just for myself. And what do I want to know for my own personal ego stroking? That's so honest. That's wonderful. Yes, some of you are saying, yes, you don't know how to measure it. And you're worried that your child might not be at the grade level that they should be at. My daughter is finishing second grade and realized we have focused on reading and don't know where to start with writing. For us, it is simply less shut down over any writing because the child has ADHD. Okay, this is fantastic. Oh, I like this one. Being able to say what they intended to say. That is a fabulous criteria for writing. One of the criteria that I talk about in my new book is writing is first for yourself and second for readers. And so one of the criteria I used when I evaluated my kids' writing was, do I want to keep reading? Is this interesting enough to keep reading? In fact, I make the contention in my book. Can we just change the way schools teach writing? And can the key criteria simply be, do I want to keep reading? Because the fact of the matter is, if you are reading, the only thing that makes you finish the page, the book, the blog, the caption on Instagram is that it was compelling. And so what we really want to ask is, What makes writing compelling? What makes people want to keep reading? I'm going to give you a little story, and you may already know this story because I've shared it for many years, but I think it really makes the point. Before I started Brave Writer, I was working as a freelance editor, magazine writer, ghostwriter, children's book writer. Like I was doing a lot of writing, none of it really for much pay, just a little bit of money coming in. Some of it for the Wet Set Gazette about parenting and breastfeeding, right? Like, you know, early writing career stuff. And one of my friends came to me and she said, I know that you are a professional writer. And I was like, oh, thank you. I don't know if I am, but yes, thank you. And she said, how are you teaching your kids to write? Because what I'm using isn't working. So I asked her to bring me her curriculum that she was using with her homeschooled kids. And I opened it up. And the first activity was teaching kids how to write a descriptive paragraph, how to describe. So I read the sample paragraph before I read the instructions. And I got to the end of the sample and I said to my friend, did you like this paragraph? And she said, I don't remember it. What do you mean? And I said, well, when you got to the end of this paragraph, did you think to yourself, I wish there was another paragraph? Were you like, shoot, I wish there was more writing just like this? And she said, no, I barely remember it. I closed the notebook and I said to her, Glenda, why do you want to teach your kids to write using a model that is so dull you can't even remember it? When we're teaching writing, too often the criteria that we use is following the rules of the assignment, the directions, the instructions. We're like, yep, got the topic sentence. Yep, engaged the five senses. Yep, completed the assignment, double checked for spelling errors. Okay, I must have done a good job. But the writing that sells, that we care about, that we want to keep reading, that's the writing that's been successful, even if it's misspelled, even if it's missing punctuation. When you get like a Mother's Day card from one of your kids, even when it's misspelled, aren't you just like filled with joy that they found words to express how they feel about you? That's the goal of writing. The goal of writing is to connect first with the ideas I have, to get them out, and then second, to connect with a reader. Writing is first for yourself and then for a reader. So when we're talking about writing assessment, we want to start with a completely different criteria. Was it good to read? Did it express what the writer was trying to express? And then did I receive it? And could I connect to it? Could I hear their voice, understand their facts, see the description in their mind's eye? Could I connect to the writing? What a totally different criteria than is my child at grade level? Now, that is a good question. I'm not saying you shouldn't consider it, but we're going to look at how that works today in this webinar. Let me just check the comments for a quick moment, and then we will start with the PowerPoint. Do their writing skills allow them to communicate with others more effectively today than at the beginning of the year? Now you're getting it. That's a beautiful criteria. Another one, they want to up their game. They have been writing for themselves for a while, and now they want an audience. They want to have their ideas understood. Let me ask you this. How many of you, before we move on, have social media? Do most of you have like a Facebook or an Instagram? When you post, let's say you post on Facebook, or you are posting a caption for a photo or a reel, what do you hope happens when you make that post? What are you thinking of? Why do you bother? Let's put it that way. Why would you bother to post? For engagement, for readers. You're hoping somebody out in the wild blue yonder is scrolling along and they're taking the time to connect with you through your writing. When you're scrolling through Instagram and you read writing that connects to you, what is the first impulse? For most of us, it's to click the heart. which is one level of reader feedback that did not exist for the entire history of the world till 2008 when it got introduced on Facebook. Think about that. For all the millennia human beings have been alive, when they wrote, they didn't get to see their audience smile. The reading was happening in a living room, in a salon, in a library, in a university. The writer was in another country, and they never got to see a smile or a heart or an emoji that was a hug. Today, you literally get to see the reaction of your readers. It's incredible. I have a whole chapter in my book called Writing Back, Write Back, because we are the most likely to write when we read someone else's writing that connects to us. So the first level is we, do a little heart. But what's the next level? We literally write a comment. Sometimes we argue with what we read. And by the way, we love that experience. We love reading things that offend us, that go against what we believe, so that we can have the righteous indignation that fuels a passionate reply, right? And it makes us right. Why are these not the conditions for writing in school? It blows my mind. When I was growing up in the 1970s, we had this machine called the Ditto machine. It's before Xerox or photocopy machines existed. And basically, what it was is the teacher would type like a worksheet on what's called a ditto. So the top page was paper, and it was up against this purple sort of coated paper. And when you typed with the real keys, not a keyboard, but like the actual striking keys, it would cause that purple to get on the backside of the sheet of paper. And then you'd rip this paper off, you'd affix it to a drum, push a button, and it would ditto off, creating dittos, right? Copies. It would ditto off worksheets, and it would start in really dark purple. And then by the end of its 100 copies, it would be very pale. Okay. Back in the 70s, when we had these, oh yeah, I remember the smell too, and the razor blades to scrape off when you mistyped. And I mean, there were lots of tricks. What I remember is that teachers were desperate in the 70s because they were groovy teachers. They didn't have state standards to worry about. They were actually trying to teach. They tried to create ways for our writing to be read. So I had these junior high English teachers who created like literary magazines with dittos. And in high school, if you had a really good paper, the teacher would create a ditto out of it and distribute it to the whole class. My college application essay got distributed to the entire senior class. Like that was electrifying. Like I wrote this essay for my application to UCLA, but it suddenly was being read by, hundreds of kids. Like that felt amazing. They were trying to create conditions that we have automatically today. I mean, can you imagine creating these artificial conditions for people to read student writing when today they can comment on Substack, Reddit, Discord, they can comment on TikToks, YouTube channels, gaming discussion boards. Your kids want to write more than you give them credit for. It's just we don't credit any of that writing. We treat all that writing like it's just mere entertainment and doesn't count. But let me let you in on a little secret. The students we have who've had, kind of unfettered access to writing online are our best writers in our classes. Because guess what? They have paid attention to what makes readers interested. They have learned the writing sense of humor. They have learned the way to keep comments coming. This is why your kids, I'm tired of the word addiction. The reason your kids are so caught up in TikTok, Instagram, all these spaces is not just dopamine. By the way, dopamine, not a terrible thing. We all want more. It's because they are writing. I'm sorry. That's what's happening. They're doing podcasts. They're doing YouTube channels. They are creating TikToks and short videos. What they are doing is the thing that has compelled human beings since Socrates. which is self expression to be received by an audience. They love it. They love it. And they're growing because of it. Okay, I'm not telling you how to handle the internet, the screen time. I just want to be one of those lone read voices that shows you a different way of looking at this. The day the internet threw open its doors, do you know who raced in? Homeschooling mothers who were lonely and desperate for connection, and all their children. Kids were like, I want a MySpace. I want a live journal. Kids who hated school writing had live journals where they poured out embarrassing, soul rending information for the whole world to read. By the way, some of you were those kids. How many of you listening right now had a live journal? Would you have called yourself an addict? How about Blogspot? Yes. How about Tumblr? How many of you had Tumblrs? Did that not count? Was that not writing? By the way, if you had a choice between writing in your live journal passionately about why you're a vegan versus writing an essay for 10th grade about veganism, and you got to choose and both counted, which would you have picked? Okay, definitely the journal over writing the essay. I mean, is it even? It's a no brainer, isn't it? Is there any question? Now, I was weird. I loved writing essays, but here's why I loved writing. When your kids don't know that they love writing, they keep a live journal and they don't know they're writing. They keep a Substack because they don't know they're writing. They do fan fiction, they don't know they're writing. Here's what they think they're doing when they're typing. They're sharing their thoughts and they have to use a keyboard to do it. It's like texting instead of phone calling. They're not thinking about it as writing. The reason that they don't think of LiveJournal, of MySpace, of Facebook, of Discord, of Zynga, of Blogspot, of any of those as writing in the way that we think about it is because there are no grades. There's no evaluation. They are doing what writing is actually for, which is interesting other people to read their writing, finding readers. Think about the last time you wrote in school. How many people read the piece you worked on all week? Let's say you had to write like a 6-page essay in college. How many people read that essay? Can you tell me? 2. If it was 2 people, tell me who they were. Definitely 1, the professor, your mom to edit, and your teacher, parent and professor. Okay. The parent read it. Why? To make sure the professor got a good copy so you wouldn't be embarrassed. Isn't that right? Did either of those people read it because, gosh, they can't wait to hear what you have to say about the Mayans? Your parents didn't even read your paper, your teammates and your professor. In other words, if I'm going to write something and the only person who's going to read it officially is a teacher, and their only goal is to evaluate whether or not I guessed accurately what they wanted in that paper versus writing a TikTok or a podcast where hundreds or thousands of people can see it, read it, and comment. I mean, is it hard to understand why they pick one over the other? We are being victimized by school. We're treating writing like the whole performance of it is just so one person can lay their eyes on it and tell us how it fell short. No wonder kids hate writing. No wonder. So we can do it differently in homeschool. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a look at how it can be done differently. Let me share my screen. By the way, Don and I are in love with this template. One of our staff members has a husband who is a graphic designer. He did such a good job. I'm in love with this. All right, here we go. So, the first thing I want to say when we're talking about reframing assessment is we want to stop thinking in terms of evaluation. That is the very first thing we have to do. We've got to stop thinking in terms of evaluation. So I asked the question, why do we evaluate writing? And these are the three reasons that I think of. The first is to find mistakes. And you all admitted that, right? Your parents read your papers so that they could figure out if you had spelled correctly, punctuated, and formatted according to the directions. And by the way, I really believe in that. And when your kids go off to college, they absolutely should use the writing lab or their roommate or someone to lay eyes on their paper before they turn it in. That's a fabulous thing to do. But evaluation implies that if these mistakes are still present in your paper, you are going to get marked down in some meaningful way. Second, the other reason we evaluate writing is to see if your child is ready for the next level. So, at school in particular, we're asking the question, are you going to move up a grade? Are they ready for harder formats? And often, the question that we get at Brave Writer is, will this prepare my child for fill in the blank, junior high school academic writing, college prep, right? Like these are the questions we get all the time. And so evaluation is meant to give us the answer to those questions. The third reason that kids get evaluated in their writing is to compare them to other students. And in school, this happens naturally. Teacher is sitting down to grade 30 or 100 papers. Some are going to stand out and some are not. And instead of thinking about that individual student's progress and measuring that child against themselves, they are naturally going to prefer some students to others. I have a friend, we were both in honors English in high school, and we were talking about my book as I was getting ready to write it. And she said, Julie, what used to drive me crazy is that I always got a B plus on my papers. You always got A's. And no matter how much I talked with the teacher or asked for additional help, my grade never changed. So then I didn't try very hard and I still got B pluses. And I call this the B plus syndrome. It's like in the teacher's mind, that student is a B plus compared to everybody else. She can never break out of it. Writing isn't necessarily her thing. So that's the problem with comparison, is that students don't get to be seen as individuals who grow. They are just locked in many times to whatever status they have been relegated to in the context of the other classmates. Sometimes kids get compared to students in the same grade. We see this with standardized testing in the state. And then finally, you might find that you're comparing students in your own family. So maybe your oldest child was really a voracious reader and writer, and then along comes your next child who's got ADHD and doesn't want to sit down to write. And you start worrying because your oldest child was so easily successful. And now you think, well, this child's way behind where my oldest child was at this age. And so you move into this evaluation mode instead of really paying attention to the unique person that's living in your house. So the second question I want to ask then is, why do we read writing? We just examined why we evaluate it. Let's look at why we read it. And from my perspective, we start by wanting to read what a writer has to say. That's a very different mode than I want to grade this paper, right? So when my kids write, I'm interested to see what they have to say. And in this case, we're looking at maybe a story or an idea or the reporting of a fact or the insight that they have into the topic. I know for me, a lot of times I would like set up an opportunity to write about a topic with my kids, and immediately I would have this ideal text pop into my brain. And that ideal text would be like how it should sound. Let's write about spring. I know they're going to write about robins and the nest in the backyard and the fragrant air and the beautiful blossoms on the trees. And then along comes my child and he just writes about the dog running in the mud, right? Like for us, if we're in evaluation mode, we immediately imagine what we should be getting. But if we're just in reading mode, we're like, I wonder what this person has to say about this topic. I'm curious to see what this person put on the page. We want to know the story, ideas, and insights. Secondly, we want to learn something. Usually, when I'm reading online, I'm trying to find out more information about something: politics, education, how to make green enchiladas. I'm just, Googling along, looking for somebody who's got good information that I can digest, the statistics, the experiences. I remember when I broke my ankle, I wound up on a discussion board dedicated to people recovering from ankle breaks, and there were literal ankle break coaches who had a marketing funnel to help people do the right activities to fully recover. And I was like, mind blown. This person who had broken her ankle in New Zealand had developed an international following of people who had broken ankles. Her customer base recovered. She had to keep generating new interest with new people with broken ankles. This is what writing is. She found an endless audience of ankle breaks. And her story was so compelling. I remember just like laying there with my foot up in a boot, and I'm just reading all the details of how it broke and what she went through and all her surgeries. You would not find it interesting. I found it interesting because why? My ankle was broken and I wanted the information. And then finally, the third reason we read is to be entertained. Hello, do you all read Emily Henry novels? Are you interested in Jane Austen? We read for entertainment. Sometimes we read Substack political opinions just for entertainment, or How to Train a Dog, but we're looking to be stimulated, to be compelled to keep reading. That's the kind of writing we like. Reading someone's writing leads to assessment, which is what we're going to look at next. Evaluation leads to criticism. And that's the problem with all the writing instruction in America, anyway. I don't want to speak for other countries, but I will tell you right now, I am not a fan. And here's why. Not because I homeschool, not because I'm pro children, but because I'm pro grown ups. I have met more damaged adult writers than you can possibly count. If I go speak at a conference and I'm teaching on writing and everyone's taking notes, and then I say, okay, we're going to pause and do a little free writing, the whole room goes like this. I literally hear people say things like, I didn't think she was going to make me write. They're literally in a writing workshop to learn how to get their kids to like writing. And the moment I ask them to write, the whole room loses energy. They all want to go to the bathroom. They want to refill their water. They do not want to write. Why? Why? Why do you think? Why is it that you could show up at a writing workshop as an adult? You're not about to get graded. And yet, when I suggest we're going to take some time to free write, there's a percentage of the population that doesn't want to do it or feels like, oh gosh, I have to write. Scared of being judged, no confidence because it feels too vulnerable. It's putting yourself out there, insecurity. And yet, whenever I say, turn to the person next to you and do a little paired sharing, do you know what happens? I can't get people to stop talking. I literally have to yell in the microphone, hey, stop, come back. Don't you think that's interesting? What's the difference? One is writing it down on paper where no one will even see it and everyone's all freaked out. And yet, when I say share what you're learning and do it in a pair where there's a person talking with you, what happens? They explode into enthusiasm. They can't shut up. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? It is my thesis that we all have self expression that we want to give to someone else. Yes, writing does feel more permanent, open to judgment and analysis, but let me ask you, have you ever been to a dinner with your family and they don't agree on politics? Is there any judgment happening there? Any analysis? Any, critique happening? Have you ever experienced that? Because I mean, I have. Here's the difference. It's not that we're just afraid of judgment. It's that we've been conditioned to believe we don't have anything worthy of writing. That the people who are professionals, who are educators, those people get to be published, whether it's on a blog, in a newspaper, or an academic journal. But there's like this gatekeeper saying, the rest of the world, your thoughts really aren't interesting. They're not well enough expressed. You don't deserve to be read. That's what evaluation feels like. It's an invalidation of the inclination to self express in a meaningful, thoughtful way. So, if we shift to being readers, what I call in my book reader response feedback, if we shift to being readers, we move more into assessment. Dawn, yesterday in our Brave Writer training, did a great job of asking people, what is assessment? Like, we might assess if we have all the ingredients to make green enchiladas by looking in our refrigerator, checking the pantry. We're not criticizing ourselves. We're like, do I have what I need? Is there enough here? Other kinds of assessments. Is it time for a haircut? Um, is this the right interest rate for making this purchase? Right? We assess situations so that we can respond to them and sort of fix whatever isn't leveling up to what we need it to be. In writing, the three key areas that we assess when we are homeschooling are the state of our kids' mechanics. Invariably, we have to do that because between 8 and 18, they spend 10 years learning how to do those mechanics. So we do have to assess. We have to take a look and see, oh, they need more practice. Or, hey, I think they've got this. Let's focus now over on this. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Secondly, we're looking to see if they have vivid, specific language. You know, if your son writes about roller coasters and it says, roller coasters are awesome. I love roller coasters. They're so much fun. They're my favorite thing at Kings Island. I would go on a roller coaster every day if I could. That's not vivid. That's not specific. However, it's true. So now what is our job? Our job is to help our kids find more vivid, more specific language. One of the ways I do that with my kids, and I teach it in all of our programs, and our teachers teach it, you'll find it in the darts and the arrows as well, growing brave writers as well, is to ask for more. Hey, you said roller coasters are awesome. Tell me more about awesome. What was awesome about them? You said you love roller coasters. Tell me more. What do you love about them? And in fact, in Growing Brave Writers, we have an entire activity called Keen Observation that probably has, I don't know, 50, 60 questions. And you can just go through and start asking those questions of your kid to help them draw out the language that's inside their bodies that they don't know how to tap into because no one has been curious enough. One of the models that I give in my new book that I think is a useful model. In fact, I was interviewed on a podcast last week, and this mom, who's a podcaster, she was like, I love this idea. And here's the idea: treat your child like they're on a podcast, interview them, give them a mic. She did that with her child as a podcaster, and suddenly her child wrote this incredible paragraph because she was able to ask specific questions, and the child felt like, I'm being spoken to like an authority, right? Vivid, specific language that we can pull out. And then lastly, we are assessing detail and accuracy of content. And when I say that, what I mean is not just metaphors or imagery like we might with vivid, specific language, but the detail of fact, the accuracy of an experience or an assertion or information, right? Like, especially in this era of Chat GPT, you might use it for research, but you've got to vet to be sure it's not hallucinating and giving you phony facts, things that aren't actually true. So when we assess writing, these are kind of the three buckets that are the most important: state of mechanics, vivid, specific language, and then the detail and accuracy of the content. So when we assess, I wanted to put together for you kind of a way to think about any of your kids and where they are in their writing journey. I like to use this sort of series of questions. There's notice what's going on with your kids, make a plan, and then practice. And how simple is that? Notice, plan, practice. If I could think of a good synonym that started with a P for notice, I would. But to me, it's, pay attention maybe, but notice. Take a look at their mechanics. You can pull out something from September, compare it to March, and see, has the handwriting improved? They're really still struggling with that cursive R. Okay, I'm going to make a plan. We're going to find some sentences that have the R in it, and then we're going to practice. We're going to practice using the cursive R. Perceive, that's nice. I like that. Perceive, notice, exactly. So notice what's going on in their mechanics. Maybe you find that they're doing better with copy work, struggling a little with dictation. So you're going to plan more dictation going forward. And you're going to use time to converse, to really look at the various mechanics in the passage before you dictate it so that they have greater success. Maybe you've been using the arrow and the dart for a while. And so now you want to have your kids pick some passages. And you might say, I've noticed when I look back at your original writing that you struggle with OUGH. That seems to be one of those tricky places. Look through this book that you're reading for yourself, like maybe it's a novel they read at bedtime or something, and see if you can find a passage that has words with OUGH. And we're going to use those to practice these words. We're going to do copy work, French style dictation, and dictation using passages you pick for that specific need. This is how assessment works. We notice what needs improvement, we make a plan, and then we do the practice. The second opportunity is to notice imprecise language. So we talked about that before. The roller coaster is awesome. Tell me more about awesome. Another thing that kids tend to do is they use a lot of adjectives or they use adverbs like really and very and always and never. These are opportunities to go back and talk with your child because hiding behind those label words are so many more words that they could be contributing to this piece. But when they're in that first draft, they're in the like white hot heat of inspiration. And so what they do is they use shortcuts. They use one word to capture like an entire afternoon experience. And then what you're doing is you're coming back and helping them unpack that suitcase, pull out more language, and make it more precise. So if your child is struggling with vocabulary or you feel like there might be a way to get them thinking of more words, you can play word games. You can have your child read aloud to you, or you could have them read to themselves. They could even listen to an audiobook. And you could take them to the library. You could have a poetry tea time. You could play word games like Spinergies, categories, bananagrams. There's so many. They can also just have conversations with you, which is the easiest one because you're an adult with an adult's vocabulary. And please use it. Do not dumb down your content for your children. Let them hear your words in context. In fact, one of the ways to grow a vocabulary, people sometimes get on my case about it, but I still stand by it, is to watch TV, sitcoms, or children's television in particular. The language is clever and it is being acted out by professional actors. And their one job is to ensure that you understand the meaning of every word and that you get the full maximum impact of what that word means in that context. It's a great way to grow vocabulary. And then finally, what if they are not descriptive enough of that information? They're saying things like tanks are heavy instead of how much a tank weighs. Or they say something like, and then the tanks rolled through Europe. And you're like, okay, Europe's pretty big. Where did they start? Where did they end? Whose tanks are they? Right? And you can teach your kids how to Google, how to use the nonfiction section of the library. Sometimes it's really helpful to even go on a field trip or have an experience. You might visit the place or a website. You might do the activity. You might then take notes and include that in the writing. Notice, plan, and practice. Assessment looks like this. Assessment is not, did my child score 80%? Now, that's evaluation. I'm not saying there's never a role for evaluation. What I'm saying is to grow in writing, evaluation is a dead end. Assessment helps you actually detail in a detailed way teach your child so that they improve, because that's the goal. Sometimes teachers will say evaluation is to help your student improve. Interestingly, there are these two researchers, Knobloch and Brannon, who studied like hundreds of papers that had feedback from a teacher on them returned to students to see if on the next paper, those comments from the previous paper would actually improve the student writing. And they found that the percentage of improvement from teacher comments on student writing, well, before I tell you, can you guess? What percentage of improvement was there from teacher comments on the next paper? Yeah, you guys figured it out. Literally zero. And you know, I was married to a high school teacher. He would spend an entire weekend giving these dedicated comments, and there was no improvement. When I told him that statistic, he was so discouraged. But here's the reason why. They're evaluation comments. They are not assessment comments. When my teachers are trained to teach for Brave Writer, they are giving reader response feedback. They are commenting like a reader, and they're giving the opportunity for the student to then take that information and want to improve it so it makes a better connection with the reader. That's what works. So when we're looking at how writing grows, it is a mixture of reading widely, practicing the mechanics, and spending time in conversations and research. When those three come together, you can write. And one of the things is so funny. I was working out right before this webinar, and my little workout group, there's like three of us working out and a trainer who trains us. And he knew I have this book coming out, and he has a son who's like 11 or 12. And he said, Julie, what is something that people don't know about the writing process? And so I said to him that what most people don't know is they assume that a writer just has all the words ready to go and they sit down and they write a draft. I said, but actually, that's not how it works. First, you have to read a lot, and then you start writing, and then you run out of things to say. So you go back to research, and then you talk to your boyfriend or your best friend, or you type up a Substack, and you test out the ideas in some kind of conversational format. And then you write some more. And then you go back to reading, and then back to conversations and research. And then once you have kind of like a body of material, you go in and you look at the mechanics. Is it structured right? Is this the right order? Do I have a good opening? Do I need subheadings? That's how you write a book. It's also how you write a 3-paragraph summary. This is how writing functions. And so when you're assessing a child who suddenly says, I have nothing more to say, you can ask yourself, do they need more information, more conversation so they can include more detail? Do they need to read more so that they're stimulated with additional ideas and better vocabulary? Basically, the skill you have to write is related to how many words you have in that domain. If all you've done is read one chapter on Pocahontas and now your child's supposed to write a report, that won't work. But if you have a child who's been playing lacrosse for 4 years and you say, let's write a report on lacrosse, they're going to have all these words available because of all their years of experience. So we need conversations and research. We need to read widely, and we practice the mechanics using somebody else's writing so that we can then bring those skills to the piece of writing that we're creating on our own. Evaluation focuses on what wasn't done right yet, whereas assessment focuses on what has yet to be learned. I would take a screenshot of this right now or a photograph. I'm just going to leave it up for a moment. Evaluation focuses on what wasn't done right yet. Assessment focuses on what has yet to be learned. And before we go, I want to remind you of the writing triangle. This is the way that we conceive of writing in Brave Writer. It starts with original thinking. The thoughts in your head, the ideas, the insights, the things you care about live inside of you. And that is the source material for writing. The words are not out here. You don't have to hunt and peck or guess what the teacher's thinking. You have to get better at going inside and being curious about what you think. Then we teach the mechanics. The mechanics are transcription skills, whether that's typing or handwriting. And we learn those mechanics using literature. In Brave Writer, that's the quill, the dart, the arrow, the boomerang, and the slingshot. Literature is the source of instruction, not your own writing. That protects the ego and it gives you these fabulous models of perfectly copy edited material. While we work on the mechanics, and by the way, at the beginning, kids don't have any mechanics, but they have lots of thoughts. So they're as far apart as they will ever be in the writing life at age 8. But over time, as their mechanic skills grow and their original thought gets combined with those mechanics, they are increasing in their writing proficiency. This takes 10 years. At age 18, they will have brought enough mechanics together with original thought to be adult writers. Inside the triangle, that's you. You're making up the gap. You're the person who coaches, instructs, supports, reads, cares, shows interests, asks questions, has conversations. That's your role. You make up the gap between mechanics and original thought. And you use developmentally appropriate writing projects. Those writing tasks that your child is capable of today, not the ones you wish they were ready to do tomorrow. If you meet them where they are today, they grow to the next level. You are not required to get them through all the levels by 18 if they aren't ready. My son Liam, who went to a very hard college, did not go till he was 20, and he was my son with dysgraphia. There is time. Do not believe the lie that you owe your child the same timeline as a school. Schools produce kids who get out and go to college who hate writing and use Chat GPT. That's what's happening. I have an entire chapter on reader response feedback in my new book. So if you really want to read it there, you can. But we also have Growing Brave Writers, which is where the curriculum is to teach this kind of writing instruction with all the coaching strategies, the full body activities, and even assessment tools, a checklist for your self esteem, a narrative sketch, Common Core, and academic standards to help you kind of get a picture of what you're successfully doing already. And then, of course, we have the darts and the arrows and the boomerangs and the slingshots. These teach the mechanics and they come with like a weekly planner and a skills tracker. And I hope you're using those. I think most of you use all these products. So this isn't really a sales pitch as much as it is a reminder that these things work. They do the thing that you wish was being done. All right. So let me stop sharing. But that is the majority of what I wanted to express to all of you, that writing assessment is all about examining and noticing where your child is today, and then making a plan and practicing. And for those of you asking the question, did my child do enough writing? Okay, here's how I want you to think about it. I did this as a reel years ago. We probably need to do it again. Here's how you know that you did enough writing. You would have done more if you could have. So, yes, the answer is yes. You would have done more if you could have. Why do I say it like that? Because if you didn't do any writing this year, or you did very little, it's because you couldn't do it. You did not have the handholds, the clarity, the support. You were afraid of creating damage in your relationship. Thank you for caring about that. I have often told parents who come to me, I have a 14-year-old, we've done no writing. I'm like, well, does he hate writing? No, we haven't done it. Thank you. Thank you for not damaging your writer. You can start now. Don't worry about the first 14 years. We've got you. Let's start at least with this clean slate where he doesn't hate it. And if your child hates writing, we've got you too, because you can start where you are and have this transformational experience of how you support your writer's growth. You do not have to be the evaluator. One of the chapters in my book, I talk about the difference between being a coach and a referee. A referee is the person who's saying, hey, you screwed up. You screwed up here, here, here. Here are the penalties. Here, here, here. A coach is on the sideline going, hey, try this strategy. Oh my gosh, you were so close. Here's what you can do a little bit differently, and then you'll get exactly what you're looking for. Be a coach. Stop being a referee. Here's what I know about writing. If you protect your child's sense of identity and that their ideas and insights have value, when they finally write, they will write. They'll often write quite well. But if they are constantly reminded that they are not living up to a standard that somebody else dictated to them, they shut down. And by the time they're 65, they cry when they meet me, telling me of the moment when they were young, when somebody damaged them through writing critique. And I cannot tell you how many of those adults have found me. I mean, I feel like a literal writing damage therapist for the number of people who've come to me to say, this teacher did this teacher did that, this exam did this comment from my mother. We're talking about the soul of a human being when we're talking about writing. We're not talking about commas. Who cares? Anybody can learn a comma. Hire somebody to help you do commas. No one can think the thoughts that are unique to you. Those deserve to see the light of day, to be preserved forever in writing, to be read by an interested, loving audience. That is you. No one else. Give your kids that gift. Yes, content over commas. That's our favorite slogan around here. And just to be clear, you can still teach them commas. Just don't use their writing to browbeat them. Use E.B. White's. Use somebody else's. Okay. Do we have any questions? English as a second language is its own skill. Like if your kids don't speak English, they need to learn it the same way they would. My kids had to learn French or Spanish. But the writing process, amazingly, doesn't have anything to do with the language. I will tell you something ironic. My book is being translated into Vietnamese. That's the first foreign language. And I was like, Vietnamese? We don't even use the same alphabet, because the process for generating thought and getting it to the page is independent of transcription. Doesn't matter what language you speak. So they'll do the best they can in English, but also let them write in their native heart language, because that's what you'll get. You'll get the fullest self-expression. I saw somebody else ask a question that I wanted to answer. Where is it? Oh, there's two in the Q&A box now. All right, let's take a look. Would starting my 14-year-old at the high school level program work if they've done little writing? It depends. If they are comfortable with writing and they don't have struggles reading or with mechanics, then yes, they could start with the essay prep series or movie discussion club or one of the like fan fiction or Taylor Swift song lyric classes. Something like that would be a great entry point. But if they struggle or lack self-confidence, then I would start with the Building Confidence middle school program, just because it's so good. And it would give your child, your 14-year-old, some experience that isn't as high stakes as high school writing. I feel like I've already taught my kid to hate writing. What's a good first step for us in the right direction? Oh, thank you. All right. We have a practice in Brave Writer that I call going belly up. So you make a really yummy drink, a smoothie, a shake, hot chocolate, coffee, whatever your kid can tolerate that they enjoy. And you get some time alone with that child. And you say, I am learning some new stuff about writing. And I am sorry to say that I didn't realize the way I was teaching you was hurting your feelings and causing damage. and I feel sick about it. I am so sorry about that. And the stuff that I'm learning from this program sounds kind of experimental and fun. And I want to learn a whole different way to write because writing kind of intimidates me too. I wonder if you would be open to going on this journey together and you can tell me at any point that something doesn't feel right. And then we'll figure out together how to help it feel better. Some version of that. Make sure you give some time for them to tell you what hurt their feelings. Like, don't just monologue. That was kind of the gist. But, after you apologize and say, tell me how it's been for you. What's upset you the most? What do I do that creates the most pain for you? People don't want just an apology. They want the opportunity to tell you how you hurt them. So give that child the opportunity and then tell them that they get to be partners with you. Show them ideas that you have that you want to try and say, I want your honest feedback. Let's give it a whirl. If you hate it, I want to hear that. Like that. That's how you rebuild the trust. And for us, I would say Growing Brave Writers is where you want to start. That's absolutely awesome. And of course, my book is going to be great reading for you, but for the curriculum piece, Growing Brave Writers is what you want. If I haven't cracked Growing Brave Writers yet, and yes, I look forward to the new book, should I focus on that with the 9-year-old or just read the new book? I would do both. Okay. So here's what I love about the book. I wasn't going to write this because I've already written Growing Brave Writers, and I was very worried about that. And my editor said something it won me over completely. She said, but do you have a book? Like something people can listen to on their walks or read and just sit with without feeling the pressure of forcing their kids to do schoolwork. I was like, I don't. And they said, then write the book so people can go through that transformation. They can really think about the ideas and have that paradigm shift that really changes how they think. And then use Growing Brave Writers to teach writing because those activities are fabulous and just the strategies, and you'll get it. Sometimes we have people use Growing Brave Writers and they really actually should have read this, but it didn't exist yet. Now it does. So that's good. My son loves reading, but not writing. I'm excited to do more copying from his preferred books. For a child that struggles with handwriting, how much should I focus on writing mechanics versus typing mechanics? Does the skill cross over? They're two totally different skills, and you want to do both. And you just talk to your child about it that way. You say, we're going to work on both. I want us to do 1 week, 3 days of handwriting, 2 days of typing, and then the next week we'll flip it. And you get to pick the days, and you get to decide which day is typing and which is handwriting. And if you prefer one to the other, we'll do the longer passages with the one you like better. Like that. Collaborate. Turn it into a partnership, not you doing something to your child. Okay, let's see. After a 4-year relocation in the USA, my children speak, read, and write in English. But for me, there's so much information on the website that I'm getting a bit lost. They are 10 and 8 years old and are homeschooled. How will I know what product's appropriate for them? So start with the DART and Growing Brave Writers. Those are like just the best place to begin. And they will walk you through what needs to be done. And if you need more support than that, if you're in Brave Learner Home, you can get it just by posting in the community discussion board. You can also reach out to us at help@bravewriter.com, and we'd be happy to help you. Oh, it's so nice to see everybody in here. Somebody said, what about journaling? My son enjoyed this all on his own idea when he was 8. Now at 14, he doesn't write much at all. So one of the things about journaling is for some kids, it's just too boring. It's like there's an audience of 0. They're just writing for themselves. There are 2 ways to think about it. One thing I did with one of my kids is we kept what I called a special occasion journal. So he would only write in it after a really important, significant event happened, and he wanted to retain the memory of it. He still has the journal, and he's 37. It was just one of those black and white composition books from the grocery store. So that's one way to do it. Another one is have them start a blog. My daughter did a fashion blog for a year. I have a son who has a Substack. You could open a Substack, and he could write there. Sometimes this private journaling in a notebook, they outgrow it or it's just not their thing. I'm a working homeschool mom and have to leverage my time wisely. How teacher intensive is your writing curriculum for an 8-year-old? Yeah, so here's the thing. For an 8-year-old, just use the quill or jot it down or something Is your 8-year-old reading? If they're not reading yet, you want to use the quill. If they are reading, you could use the dart. And everything in Brave Writer relies on parents being involved. So intensive isn't a word I relate to very well. It's there's nothing that you could give an 8-year-old, in my view, that would be great for education. Like an 8-year-old shouldn't be learning by themselves. You don't hand them a book and then leave them with it. What they need, though, doesn't take much time because I don't know if you know this, but there was a study done about attention span. And what they discovered is that kids' attention span, where they can give dedicated, true, deep attention, is age plus 1 minute. So if you have an 8-year-old, they can give you 9 good minutes max for each subject with a break in between. So what you're wanting to do then is have a little read aloud time, do one of the activities in the Dart, maybe do one activity from Growing Brave Writers if they're reading already and can handwrite a little bit. Done. And spread that out over a week. I think a lot of times parents are doing too much. I signed up my daughter for the dynamic thinking essay prep class, and now I'm wondering if I should have waited. She's 14 and hasn't done much writing other than free writes, journaling, and writing activities. Perfect. She's going to do great. Dynamic thinking is a very safe way to start for your 14-year-old. She's going to do great. Everything you just said is the exact kind of prep she needs for that class. It is very much like free writing. It's actually quite similar to my Becoming a Critical Thinker book. Not identical, but there are some similar activities, and 14's perfect for them. She's going to do great in it. I'm not worried about that at all. Okay, let's see. You have boys that love the Dart. Everyone loves the Dart. The Dart's the best product ever. Snaps to Dawn. She came up with the name. She's got the design. She's got the staff. Telling you, she's incredible. I am literally the luckiest business owner on the planet. Let's see here. Anything else? Oh, somebody said for journaling, maybe have him write about what has been most interesting throughout the year to incorporate into a family letter. Yeah, that's a fantastic activity as well. Okay, I think we might be at the end. All right. Thanks, everybody. This was great having you. Have a fabulous night, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Bye, everyone.